Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. And look, it's not just me, but Simon O'Connor, he's just got back from overseas on his junket, which we'll hear probably about, and he's on jet lag. And so it's not only jet lag, it's also his modem seems to be lagging as well. So he will join us very shortly. Look, got a lot to talk about, so I'm going to get straight into it. And if he doesn't appear, then you're just going to hear from me. So that's going to be very exciting. So look, first story that we were going to talk about, and I was interested just to hear, oh, there he is. He's frozen though. So, he will eventually appear and he'll suddenly appear on screen and he'll get a fright because he realizes he's live. So just enjoy this. But look, just a quick commentary about the Right Honourable Jim Bolger. Actually, he was I don't know if you're interested in politics when he was alive. It was sort of the 90s. He was the Prime Minister over the 90s. So I hadn't quite got into politics, and so it was a bit of a refresher. He basically took over from David Lange and then did his 9 years, got voted out in a coup by Jenny Shipley. So maybe Christopher Luxon should be worried a little bit. I got voted out in the coup, and then he became the chairman of Kiwi Bank and did a few ambassadors in Washington. Seemed to be a really nice guy. But the interesting thing is about Jim Bolger is that he led the first coalition government, and the first coalition government, of course, was with Winston Peters. And I do remember that because I remember sitting in the car waiting for Winston Peters here he is. Finally, what happened? Jet lag.
The jet lag's now affecting my computer system.
Okay. I was just saying that I still remember sitting in the car waiting for Winston to announce that he was going with Jim Bolger in 1996, I think it was, the first right. MMP election. And then Jim Bolger only lasted until 1998, and then Jenny Shipley came in and do a coup. And I was just saying, Simon, that I do wonder whether Christopher Luxon, National's done it once. They've rolled a prime minister. You kind of think, oh, do you roll prime ministers? I mean, I was just trying to think if it's happened in Labour. Didn't Mike Moore roll? Who did he roll? The Law Commission
Geoffrey
guy.
Palmer? Or?
Yeah. So, look, did you have a few words just to say about Jim Bolger? Because obviously, just in the national circles, he would have been held in high esteem, wouldn't he?
He was. Look, I didn't know Jim well. Obviously, being in Parliament, he would visit from time to time. There were National Party events. I just found him actually just a very quietly considered person. Obviously, strong faith as well. Loved his wife. Is it Joan? Yes, he was just a lovely guy, and actually is being part of some significant changes. Obviously, the first coalition government, MMP, was something that was brought in during his time. Arguably, actually, Bob, the MMP vote, or the vote for it, was more of a rejection of the politicos and the politicians of the time. But also, he was the one who started the treaty settlement process, amongst many things. So,
I noticed also that he was. You would have disagreed. He was a Republican.
I know. He and I argued that a few times.
He ended recourse to the Privy Council, which I was always annoyed about, because I always thought that when we ended up in the Supreme Court for our court case, if it had still been the Privy Council, I would have been spending a little bit of time in England. And imagine the number of Liverpool games I could have got down to watch if that had been the case. So I was a little bit annoyed about that. But you're right. He just seemed to be a very nice politician. I actually wonder, though, Simon, do you think he came across as a nice politician because simply that was kind of a period of time when we thought everybody was nice? And that's changed a lot, as we're going to talk about, in terms of political violence, etc.
Look, undoubtedly, he would be a politician like any of us. And, there's great sides to Parliament. There's really bad and toxic sides. And I'm sure he would have shared that. But that civility, I think, that you're referencing has certainly been lost or has been eroded in the prior. Very, very different style. Yes, that's right. Dean's right. He's an Irish Catholic farmer.
Yeah, Irish Catholic farmer. Actually, a few people have got that. Food Dogs Trucking wants to know, did you get your nana nap in, Simon? Actually, I can confirm that. He did. He had a power nap, apparently. Jackie says that Michael Laws worked in Parliament for Jim or Winston. I think he worked for Winston, didn't he?
Yeah, I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway, quite a few memories. All right. That was one that we wanted to cover. The second one, just want to give the good news that, crossed the 500,000 mark. 550,000 plus views of the combined across all our social media of Issy and Zara's detransition story, the story that the media don't want to go anywhere near, don't want you to hear, won't even talk about it. But there's been huge views, and that doesn't include all the reels and shorts that our staffer Rachel has put together to promote it. And then since, the little clips that sort of just remind people that these exist. But it's just great to realise that we can get messages across and we don't have to wait for the lamestream media to come on board, Simon. We can bypass them, which is really annoys them, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, look, first and foremost, Issy and Zara's stories are amazing. Look, their courage to speak out, and not just because it's seen in some circles as a controversial issue, but these are young women prepared to share something very deeply personal that has occurred to them. So it's just marvelous. You and the team, Gordon, have done a great job putting the video together. And I certainly encourage anyone watching us now who hasn't seen the videos, make the time. Their stories are powerful. And you're right, Bob, the media don't like being outflanked, but that's one of the reasons why you've led Family First into more of this social media content. And as you like to do, we're just about on all and every platform.
Okay, speaking of platform, that was a beautiful segue. The BSA, the Broadcasting Standards Authority, is coming after the platform, which is we don't agree with them on everything, but it's a platform that at least Sean Plunkett is willing to. Actually, I have a funny story about that. The first time I appeared on the platform, Sean invited me on to interview me. He actually apologised to the audience for having me on. It was kind of like, a couple of years ago where just everyone across the media didn't want anything to do with me. Now I'm on Free Speech Fridays. He interviews me at regular basis. He let me know about this BSA decision. In fact, he was at ARC with us in February. So, I'm sitting with him at ARC. So it's been quite a turnaround. But like Reality Check Radio, RCR, the platform, Family First, because the media has been shutting out certain voices, social media has enabled us to spring up. But now the Broadcasting Standards Authority wants to come along and start vetting what we're doing. Now, Simon, some people could argue, well, what's the difference between what we're doing right now and what Mike Hosking does on News Talk ZB every morning? Apart from the fact that more people listen to us.
That's right. I think partly, there is if you wanted to make a professional amateur type dynamic, it's not taken away from the quality of the programming we do now. But, when you think of News Talk ZBs or TV1, these are large corporate, specifically, designed, set up for broadcasting and media. This is part of what we do at Family First. So there is that difference of scale. But I think the real fundamental thing people have to understand is that the Broadcasting Standards Authority is on its own deciding to increase its reach and deciding actually we're now going to incorporate in the likes of the platform, Family First, RCR, YouTube podcast. It's not in the legislation. I think that's the real kicker here for viewers to understand. The Broadcasting Standards Authority derives its power from a law that Parliament passed, which is very clear. It's about broadcasting and transmission, so radio and television. But the BSA has decided, no, we just want to increase the scope of our powers so they can ultimately, Bob, harass people like Sean, you and I and others.
Well, the other example that I heard of is, say, for example, one of our wives goes and stands out on a field and goes onto their Facebook feed and gives their opinion on something and somebody gets upset by it, that could be covered under the Broadcasting Standards Authority because basically it's any spoken opinion online. I mean, it could backfire on kind of the proponents of this because it means that also complaints can be made against some of the rabid left-wing stuff like Bomber Bradbury, some of the objectionable stuff he said about Charlie Kirk, even David Farrier, so complaints could be made about that. So it could really cause major problems, couldn't it?
Oh, massively so. And, to me, there's two really quick elements to it, Bob. One is it feels censorious. The BSA does seem to be targeting platforms, literally like the platform and others, and for what purpose, other than effectively trying to censor views. The other
Yeah.
is that this is just going to cause a huge burden. We all know of those vexatious groups and people out there who target, particularly anyone who's conservative, Christian, or centre
Yep.
right. And so the process will become the punishment. So just like Sean's finding at the moment, you get letters from the BSA, you've got to respond to them. It takes time, that takes
Yep.
money. So even if you're found to have not breached any standard, it's still problematic. And I can tell you right now, and you and I talked about this earlier, if the Broadcasting Standards Authority gets away with this, basically making up its own laws, we will find activists targeting, as they are, Sean, Plunkett, they'll target you and me. It won't stop.
Hello, activists. It's okay. We'll probably upset you. Get a backbone. All right. Now, speaking of backbone, I did something very radical, and I went to the movies last week. First time I've been for ages. Don't tell my wife, because she's always trying to get me to go to that latest one, Downton Abbey. And I have, tried to resist and said I'm allergic to the seats in cinemas and stuff, and I can't sit in the dark for long periods of time. But anyway, I did go to Prime Minister and watch the documentary. Have you actually seen it, Simon?
No, you've got to remember, I had to live through this in reality. You guys get to watch it in a cinema. I had to put up with it for years in person.
Well, I would just like to make an interesting claim in that we did tot up. I got Ken, our social media guru, to tot up how many had watched our McBlog review of the documentary, and it's around 110, 120,000 across our social media platforms. I think that may be more than actually have gone to the movies to watch this documentary. So I guess that's the encouragement. Just, I would say, Simon, and look, my emphasis in this whole documentary is not what they included. It is a puff piece. If you go liking Jacinda, you'll come away liking Jacinda. I liked it because it was politics, and I just liked some of the background stuff and seeing what goes on, the machinations and all that. But it's what they didn't include, and it's the hard questions that they didn't ask and the controversial stuff that they didn't ask. But that probably doesn't surprise you, does it? I mean, it was commissioned by CNN, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a continuation of a sort of, I'm going to use a nice big word here in honor of Bruce Logan, but it's what we'd call an apotheosis. There's the word for the day.
What?
Apotheosis. There you go. Which means basically turning someone into a god, in this case with a small g. So when you think about the reporting on Jacinda, books, even the ones she wrote herself, this fawning puff piece, as you say, it really is just trying to deify her, not in the literal theological sense, but no critique, no pushback, no challenging. And again, like her book, she barely mentions, the harder edge decisions that she made. And from what you've described, the movies avoided all of that as well. Yeah,
okay. The Choc Top was particularly good, though, and I would just like to pay credit to the movie theatre. It was just excellent with the nuts. Now, just one thing. We did have it at this last staff meeting that you weren't at. We took a vote, and when the Chloe documentary comes out, you're going to take one for the team. So I just want you to be aware of that. Okay.
Oh, I didn't think you guys sort of believed in penance.
All right, let's move on to the polls. There's been a number of polls, actually. So look, I'm just going to go through a couple of quick charts just to bring everybody up to speed. Basically, One News, very similar. National slightly ahead. People don't like Christopher Luxon, but they're seeing a lot of them. They're not seeing a lot of Hipkins. I almost wonder whether, the fact that you're not in the camera so much makes people think actually nicer things about you. One News, once again, Luxon is the most favoured. Then came out the Courier poll, the Taxpayer Union one. The red line is the left wing, so that's the Labour with their completely balanced mates, Green and Pati Maori, slightly ahead. I thought then there was this one, and this is the Post. Who does their one?
Freshwater, isn't it?
Yeah, Freshwater. I was thinking water something. I thought this was interesting. Let me just enlarge this because it actually shows what's happened since the election. So since the election, National's gone down 7, Labour's gone up 7, New Zealand First has gone up 5. So that's, I would argue that's where the national votes have gone. They've gone to New Zealand First. ACT haven't changed. Greens have gone down. And so, and sort of the minor parties have gone down because they disappear. They only sort of appear during election like TOP and unfortunately some of the Christian parties, they're not given oxygen, but also they don't demand oxygen. So, so that seems to be where Labor's gained from the wackiness and radical and the fallout from all the Green MPs, Benjamin Doyle's and all those other ones, and then National losing to New Zealand First. So, I mean, that's not actually surprising, is it, Simon?
No, I don't think it is. Certainly, as I'm out and about on the streets and, not canvassing as a politician anymore, but people seem to recognise me and come up and talk. They are disgruntled in general around National. So these are National voters, and they are finding more of a home in New Zealand First at the moment. Despite what the media say, a lot of people are actually, they're disappointed around leadership, but they're also disappointed around a lot of those cultural issues. And I don't just mean around the treaty, but the wider stuff that we talk about, like the gender issues and so on. And they don't find themselves at home in National anymore, not hearing that being represented. So they are moving to New Zealand First. The other thing I just add to your summary, Bob, I think as we get closer to the election, just over a year now, some of those sort of unsure voters, if you will, are beginning to solidify, which is, I think, another reason you're seeing New Zealand First going up, and a small number will also be leaving National. People who voted National last time in the hope of big change and are not seeing it, they'll be drifting as well.
Yeah. Okay. I just did see a funny comment here from Dennis. Dennis says Chloe's doco will be based in Gaza. She'll be over there setting up a rainbow group, I think. That's a very good one.
Dennis better be careful, because I know Dennis well. He's a top man. I'll phrase it to him. I may invite him to come along with me to watch the film.
Okay, as punishment. So I think probably this is the most interesting chart, because this averages all the polls that have been thrown at us over the last 11 months. And what you see there is just let me just enlarge that for you. You can see National just gradually but consistently dropping. Labor a little bit over the show. And if you look down further at the black line, that's New Zealand First. Go to the far left of the graph for New Zealand First, and you'll see that they started at about 6, and now they're up to, there's just this gradual increase for New Zealand First. ACT have sort of dropped, Greens holding their own. That's the most interesting one, isn't it, Simon? Because I think all the polls are kind of all over the place, but when you aggregate them, that is probably pretty consistent. We're going to have a drag race to the election, aren't we?
At this point, yes. Look, a lot can happen and change in politics, but at the moment, you'd have to say it's going to be a battle of the smaller parties. Both National and Labour are holding sort of in that early 30s, and they definitely will need coalition partners. And so much of it will come down to how, on the right, ACT and New Zealand First go, and obviously on the left, Greens and Te Pati Maori. It'll be interesting to see where Te Pati Maori goes in the next set of polls with and we'll touch on this later, I know, but all the scandals that they're facing. But, the other quick comment too, you mentioned National sort of going down slightly. I mean, they just keep being kicked in the guts by the media. I would add now the union. So you've got these massive teacher strikes. The fire service running ads at the moment saying, is it yes, tomorrow they're going to be protesting from midday to 1, so please don't start fires. I kid you not. Arsonists, take a break. And you've got the nurses' strike. So this is all orchestrated, to be blunt. And so National, they've not been given much clear air. And, we've pointed out issues around what they're doing in the past, but I think it's also really important to say that they're getting a really hard ride from the media and from the unions, which will impact the polls that we're seeing here.
And actually, I was at a cafe today, and the owner said that, I said, how's the numbers? And he said, this week it's particularly bad. I said, why? He said, well, it's because the teachers are doing these rolling strikes. So people aren't necessarily at work. people are staying home to watch kids. So it just shows how it can have this trickle effect. Look, you did say that, the media is always giving National a hard time. Their latest campaign is, and I really want to just pick out the narrative coming out of the media about Luxon, and I'm not here to defend Luxon at all, but I am really tired of the narrative. So basically they said, if the National leader were to change, who would you prefer? And then the big headline is, Chris Bishop's going to be the next Prime Minister. 16%. I mean, 16%. Give me a break. I mean, Erica's on 12, Nicola Willis. But look at the unsure. Now, what they don't tell you in all of these stats, and I actually just tweeted a bit of this, but what they don't tell you, so they say that 49% of voters think that National should change their leader. Well, when you think about that, Simon, for example, if they asked me, should the Greens change their co-leaders, I would say no, because I think the wackier the co-leaders are, the better for them not getting in Parliament. But does that mean I like them as leaders? Of course not. So my motivation of answering this, here's the key that, and look, I might just show this news clip just before you comment. So what 3 News don't say is that when they whittle down to what National supporters think, only 1 in 4, 23%, want Luxon out. So 75% of National voters don't think Luxon is the problem. Just have a watch this clip before you comment.
His voters are losing faith in the Prime Minister, with Chris Hipkins extending his advantage from June's poll up 2 to 45%. Christopher Luxon down 1 to 36%.
The two Chris's are now almost inseparable on who the country backs to make the right decisions, even when unpopular. Luxon's dropped 6 points since June to 36, just 1 behind Hipkins at 37. And now a third Chris enters the story. Infrastructure Minister Chris Bishop is laying the groundwork with the public as favourite to take over if National were to change leaders.
I'm just focused on my portfolios. Housing and infrastructure and transport keep me busy enough.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like laying the groundwork.
Asked whether National should change their leader before the next election, almost half, 49%, said they should. On Luxon's leadership, almost a quarter of those surveyed said they'd be more likely to vote National if Luxon was out. But the majority, 56%, say it would make no difference. And if National ditched Luxon, Chris Bishop is the runaway winner with 16% support, followed by Erica Stanford on 12%.
Oh, he's a runaway
and Nicola
leader.
Willis on 11%.
That is superb media. That is just a brilliant report. I won't tell you what I was shouting at the TV last night. Anyway, comments?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's just that continuing narrative, isn't it, that doesn't give Luxon much of a fair chance. Again, he's made mistakes. He isn't always connecting with the public. We've discussed that before. But, this is just effectively a hatchet job, a continuing, slow-rolling hatchet job. And you know what? The people saying that they'd want to replace him, I'm not talking about the names there, but the public would be the first to complain if they did roll the leadership, would be, oh no, the party's fracturing, it's no good. So it's sort of a bob each way, to use a bad racing analogy here. You change the leader, but if you change the leader, we'll be upset. Yeah. And so really it just keeps coming back to what's been months now, and it must frustrate Luxon in the ninth floor there in the beehive, just week after week of this speculation. And ultimately, it's, as we've said before, it's the media and certainly left-wing opponents who want this to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more they talk about it, they hope it will actually make it come true. And there is an element, Bob, actually, that can happen. We've talked, again, on Political Playback about a month ago of how these things can spook some of the MPs. But yeah, it must be immensely frustrating for Luxon to see this. And then the myopia of how people have forgotten about Chris Hipkins. Oh, my God.
No. So can I'm interested just to know from your time in Parliament. So when Jacinda was Prime Minister, I cannot remember any statements about, them rolling her, even when it was plummeting and she resigned because she knew that she was facing defeat. So she got out because she saw the writing on the wall. I didn't see any negative. And the question I want to ask you is, did John Key, was there ever lots of narrative around, oh, he's going to be rolled next one in line and all that?
Not that I remember. There's always with those two you just mentioned, very low level speculation. The odd article, sort of they got hit by a bus, who would step in, but none of what you're seeing here around Luxon. And probably thinking off the top of my head that the key difference is Luxon has shown a little bit of weakness. He's made early mistakes. It's sort of like it's just opened the door on this question in a way that it didn't for Ardern and Key. But now for Luxon, that door's been pushed open a little. The media are piling on through. And let's be clear as well, there will be mischief coming out of ambitious people in the caucus that will be influencing this as well. But that's, I think, is the key difference there.
Okay, here's a question I would like to put to the audience, and maybe you can clarify, because I hear this argument all the time. Jackie says, has anyone been asked to participate in any polls that are being talked about here? I just want to remind people that these polls, when you lead into the election, generally, and it was the same with the US ones in Australia and the UK, even with Brexit, they're not dead accurate, but they certainly give a pretty strong indication. And that's why I was specifically interested in this one, because it gave the average of all the polls. So it kind of hits the middle ground. But anyway, look, it's a very interesting question. And is there anybody watching that has been polled on one of these? I'm interested to know. Jack, good question from Jackie. All right, let's move on.
My wife does. She's not watching at the moment, I can say, because I heard the dog go. She's gone out for a walk. So Rachel's not watching, but she gets polled from time to time.
Okay. And it's on which party she would vote for and all that?
Oh, all of that, yep. So she's to Pati Maori, Chloe Swarbuck, more taxation. No, only kidding.
Okay. See, this is the problem, and Dean, I want to challenge you on saying this. The polls target a left-hard demographic. Well, if that was the case, I'm not sure that we would be seeing this result. So, and the fact of the matter is, leading into the last election, they were pretty accurate. So, look, I can understand the frustration. I think we've been rung once in the McCoskrie household. We might have been blacklisted after giving our opinions, so maybe Dean is on to something. Anyway, let's move on. Te Pāti Māori are not having a good time, and things are imploding.
As the government unveiled its budget in May last year, Te Pāti Māori and Toitū Te Tiriti led protest outside Parliament. It was also the day Toitū Te Tiriti spokesman Eru Kapakingi, son of MP Mariamino Kapakingi, allegedly tailgated through Parliament security, refusing to use his own Parliament access card. A letter Te Pāti Māori claims is from Parliamentary Services alleges Kapakingi abused security staff using vulgar language, racism and threats of physical abuse, allegedly calling a security guard a white bald-head, adding, "I will knock you out."
I thought it was only cis white males that were into violence. I need to send a memo to Marama.
The details surfaced overnight as part of a dossier of documents sent by Te Pāti Māori executive to its supporters. It comes in response to allegations by Eru Kapakingi, a former vice president of Te Pāti Māori, of a toxic environment within the party.
It's very much a model that is a dictatorship model.
The dossier includes an email sent by John Tamihere addressing Mariamino Kapakingi's budget overspend by what he claims is more than $100,000.
Okay, so I am interested in two aspects of this. Firstly is, it's interesting, this whole movement, and now there's these claims of violence. Although, actually, were you in the country when they did a reshuffle, or a recentering of the Te Pāti Māori, and then somebody asked the co-leaders a tough question, and Rauri Waititi manhandled Deborah Ngārewa away. Did you see that clip?
I was out of the country. I was thinking about when they removed Kapakingi as the whip. This was the early problems, but no, I was not in the country, but I have seen the clip. I mean, quite extraordinary Bob. I mean, that's a physicality which is not required. It does show you tensions in the leadership. But as a general comment too, you imagine, well, actually, we don't even have to imagine. Think about, was it 2 months ago when Nicola Willis stood in the PM's podium and gave a talk? You know, it was almost front page news and they kept referencing it day after day. This stuff with Te Maori and Toitu Te Treaty, this is serious stuff. And yep, they're covering it. But reluctantly, it's not leading the news every day, which it probably should be.
Okay. Just for those who haven't seen it, I mean, I just want you to know that if I manhandled my wife or if Simon manhandled Rachel in this way, we'd be on the front page of the newspaper. Just have a watch of how they respond to this interview. Debbie goes to answer it.
What's your response to allegations of a dictatorship model?
Kia ora, Mikey, thank you. You first can thank Mikey for that one. Kia ora.
Can I ask just on the
Yeah, incredible. I find it amazing, but the media have turned a blind eye. No, it's apparently how they operate in Parliament. Of course, you were away when Irini Kaipara did her speech, and they had this beautiful waiata. She'd already gone over time and ignored the bells that are ringing. And actually, just in terms of that, you know those bells that ring, is that an indication? Is that kind of like, can you wind it up? I mean, you know, what's the expectation when bells are ringing?
Well, they basically are signaling the end or the start. And so, long and short, when those bells are ringing, it really is just signaling the Parliament's over. I mean, you can stand there and keep talking and playing and performing, but the Parliament sort of shut down for the day. So it's really just like a school bell. It really just helps us know where we need to be. So Parliament starting, ending, and if the bells ring for a long time, it tells you you've got to come down to the chamber to vote.
And as we all know, when someone is speaking and the bell, basically speeches are very controlled as to length of time, because as we all know, there are some people who are asked to give a speech and they give a sermon. I mean, the classic about this, Simon, is that Irini Kaipara, this is her first day in Parliament. It's her first speech. And she literally gets blasted by the teacher, Jerry Brownlee, who has to stand up and say this.
The Business Committee decision to facilitate the speech following question time was on the understanding that it would be a statement and waiata, all within 15 minutes allowed under Standing Order 368. That did not occur. The speech went on for quite some time, well past the 15 minutes, followed by a waiata and then a haka from the gallery. There is no issue with waiata. There is no issue with haka, but there is an issue with the disrespectful process that was shown last Thursday.
And that really sums it up, isn't it, Simon? I mean, he finished up by saying we're going to look at expectations of politicians in the House. We're going to look at dress, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but really the issue is just the constant flagrant disregard for protocol. If you went on a marae and disregarded protocol like that, I think you would soon know about it, wouldn't you?
Oh, you'd probably get decked by Epu Kapakingi and his mates. Or
We'd be threatened, look, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a respect. And look, Brownlee is completely correct. There is a place for waiata and haka. I mean, I've been in plenty of treaty debates where when the legislation is passed, iwi in the gallery will do a waiata. It's actually quite lovely and beautiful, but it's always within a structure. At the end of the day, the Parliament only sits for a certain amount of time, and the Parliament's there to pass a variety of laws for all New Zealanders. It's not a political play place for the Māori Party. If they want to spend all day, as they like to do, talking on marae, usually about nonsense, go to a marae. But our Parliament has limited time, and they're wasting it. And there's an arrogance too. It's a bit like that Doyle fella leaving as valedictory, and this Irini coming in. Yeah, that they think they're so important that they want to talk for 20, 30 minutes. I mean, honestly, it's an arrogance of the highest order.
Yeah. Interestingly, Catherine says, Simon, you look like you've had a holiday. You've looked rested. Actually, I thought you were supposed to be at a conference, weren't you?
Well, it was actually a very good conference, but I will say to Catherine, thank you. I relaxed at one level, but jet lagged and shattered at another. I warned Bob earlier that I might be somewhat incoherent tonight.
Well, I did. I had to fill in at the beginning. Look, just somebody did say, what about the money side of things? I did want to ask you about that. So there's the claim that Mariamino Kingi, who is Eru Kapakingi's mum, and she's just been demoted, and so that maybe that's why he's annoyed. But there is some suggestion that she overspent by $130,000 in her office. How does that happen?
Well, if it's true, it is quite extraordinary. So MPs get about 60,000 a year, not personally, but you can spend in your office up to about 60,000 a year. So that's everything from renting an office, insurance, electricity, tea and coffee, flyers, printing, all of that. So for her to then spend twice that again is extraordinary. If it's staffing costs, that's even more extraordinary, because I don't know of any MP support roles that get paid that amount of money. So if it's 130,000 that she used to pay her son, firstly, that's not meant to happen. You're not meant to employ family members. That's a no-go. And then secondly, I can't think of an MP support role that's paid that amount of money. So, the word corruption is rattling around in my head. And I'd also want to say, Bob, if this turns out to be true, definitely questions around her corruption and the Māori Party's corruption, but we need to ask questions to a parliamentary services. They're sort of the conduit for all of this. Were they strong-armed to accepting the fact that her son was working for her? Did they make up a new employment role with a generous $130K pay package? Who was vetting her purchases if it's, $130,000 extra? Was she buying TVs and couches for a home office or something? Again, it all stinks to high heaven, and it really does reek of corruption if it's proven to be true. Okay,
just a quick question. You can't use the word corrupt in Parliament, can you? Is that right?
I don't think you can call an MP corrupt. You can talk about corruption, but strictly speaking, all MPs are honourable members. And so you're meant to treat an MP as always being honourable. Hence, you can't call them corrupt or a hypocrite or a liar, amongst other things, or a coward.
Okay, but we can call them a hypocrite because, actually, I want to call the media hypocrites because there was this imagery. Where's it gone?
We can say it while you're looking for it, because, of course, the BSA isn't chasing us yet.
No, look, the media went after Elon Musk because in his excitement, he did what looked like a Nazi symbol. That image above, I'm a bit worried. And I just wondered if I should report this to the media, because I think they may have missed this. But that sure looked like a Nazi salute as well. But anyway, that's just some of the interesting hypocrisy of the media in their coverage. All right, let's talk about our favourite topic, which is the Greens. The Greens are very upset because they got nothing to protest about, and they refuse to give credit to Trump. The funniest part is that Marama Davidson blamed Trump for what was happening a year ago when he wasn't the president.
With Donald Trump's epic peace plan, you guys welcoming that?
Excuse me, a US president who could have stopped tens of thousands more killing at least a year ago, a US president who has been funding, aiding and abetting a genocide for a long time. The real peace prize, if any, deserves to the people on the streets around the world every single week asking for the genocide to stop.
So he doesn't get any credit?
Not at all. Not at all. He gets my absolute criticism for continuing to support violence against the Gazans and Palestinians for many years too long.
Okay, so you don't think that he has done anything right here?
Any chance of the murdering stopping for the Palestinian people is absolutely welcomed by us. Let's be clear, that has been the pressure from the grassroots campaigning all around the world that has led to this.
I mean, you guys have been calling...
Okay, and I mean, you can tell that they're celebrating because the tea towels have disappeared. So, but I mean, it was funny blaming, Trump for something that was happening a year ago. See, Simon, this is why I want, if the pollsters come to me, I'll be saying, I don't want the leadership of the Greens to change because I think they're doing the best stuff to shoot themselves in the foot quite nicely. You weren't in the country when Winston did say, well, what's happened to all the protests? It is just worth watching the 60 seconds before you comment.
Parliamentary. How have recent developments in the Middle East been received here in New Zealand?
Well, the silence over the past week from some of the so-called pro-Palestinian protesters around this country has been absolutely deafening. For 2 years they have ranted and raved and fumed and fulminated about the situation in Gaza. They have demanded that we do more, give more, say more, and virtue signal more. And then over the past week, as a peace deal has been struck, adios amigos, as a ceasefire
Of course, he's referring to the Green MP from Mexico, whatever his name is.
has taken hold, adios to war, and welcome to peace. And then over the past week, as a peace deal has been struck, as a ceasefire has been taken hold, and as hostages have been released, from them, not a mutter, not a murmur, not a syllable, not a sound.
That's Dr. Seuss, I think.
We have seen not a press release, not a tweet, not a parliamentary question, and the question is, why this deafening silence? Because you're all about performative politics.
That's right.
Give him a knighthood. I mean, just from that speech alone. It is incredible, though, how the protesters have just gone quiet. They can't even bring themselves to say, hey, great peace plan.
Well, it just shows them to be the hypocrites that they are, because they've been calling for a ceasefire, and then now that there is one, they're not happy. And I wrote about it the other day. And I mean, ultimately, it's because they don't want peace. Most of these pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protesters, not all of them, there's obviously some genuine people out there who are concerned. But the likes of the Green Party and others want to see the end of Israel. They want to see Palestine, as they perceive it, restored, and Israel wiped off the map. And so they're not happy. They're not happy at all. And then you mix in, TDS, the Trump derangement syndrome. They can't give him any credit, where actually most commentators are. It's not all Trump by any means, but as they're noting, he has strong relationships with a lot of those Arab leaders who he's been able to put pressure on, which in turn have put pressure on Hamas. So, credit where credit is due. And the final comment, which is the counter to Marama, I can tell you now, having been in politics and in the foreign affairs space, those protests amount to nothing.
Yeah.
They amount to nothing. In fact, probably more destructive than constructive. You just think about how Greta Thunberg and those others turned, a Gaza war into themselves. It's all about themselves. Yeah. Just ridiculous comments from the Greens. But
there's no flotilla to Nigeria with the Nigerian genocide against Christian populations there. They're just gone missing. You were, I think, when Trump was speaking in the Knesset, I think you might have just been arriving back in New Zealand and trying to adjust in time zones. But there was one clip that I thought was just superb. It was by the leader of the opposition in the Knesset. So not Benjamin Netanyahu's mate, the opposition. But he said a statement that I think, everybody in the Greens, Pati Maori, Common Grace Aotearoa, the media needed to hear. Have a listen.
From here I say to all those who demonstrated against Israel these past 2 years, on the streets of London and Rome, in Paris and in Columbia University. I do not represent the government. As you know, I am the leader of the opposition. And I tell you, then, you were deceived. You were deceived. Propaganda experts, funded by terror money, manipulated you. Now that the war has stopped, you have time and a chance to go and learn the facts. The truth is, there was no genocide.
Yeah, I mean, pity we can't play it on a loudspeaker and on big screens in Parliament for all those protesters. Might broadcast it from the Harbour Bridge. All right, Casey Costello, were you in town when she did what we called the political speech of the year? I think you weren't. You're in the States, weren't you?
I think I was. I mean, I was only away for 2 weeks, but it does feel like longer, and I've missed clearly quite a bit.
Oh, it was a big junket. Your employer is obviously very good to you. Although we did hear you did a very good speech at the conference, so that's good. Just for the benefit of our watchers, you weren't at Disneyland checking out the latest rides. You were actually at a conference on religious freedom?
I was. So Brigham Young University in Utah, or BYU as it's known, does an international legal symposium to discuss, religious belief, freedom of conscience. And so I delivered an intervention and a talk there. I'll probably publish it in the coming days. And as you know, trying to track down the video of it so we can share that as well.
Yeah. The other thing is that you went to the university where Charlie Kirk was assassinated. That must have been very surreal to be in the place that had happened, just 2 weeks before?
Yeah, it was quite affecting, actually. Both Rachel and I went. It was literally 5 minutes from our hotel. And as you approach, it's called UVU, Utah Valley University. You literally walk in the way that he was taken out when you see the videos. And it was very, surreal is probably the right word, affecting. So quite a number of shrines and memorials, so lots of flowers and American flags and Bible verses. And then the area itself where he was assassinated is being roped off. But it was just a slow, steady stream of people. But it was good to be there and pay respects and then talk to some of the Americans and who were there and just sort of get their perspective. Sort of that shock and horror, really, of killing a man because he shared ideas.
Okay, and President Trump has just given him the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. I think that's how you say it. I was looking up who had Biden given the Medal of Freedom to. He'd given it to George Soros, the far left radical cultural destroyer, and Hillary Clinton. So, I think Charlie Kirk deserved it far more. Okay, let's get back. We slightly got off topic there. We were just talking about Casey Costello from New Zealand First. So you will remember Benjamin Doyle's valedictory speech. He'd only been in Parliament 10 months, and he comes in and basically says this place isn't fit for him and it's only fit for cis white men. And then a female, is Casey Costello Maori, I think, isn't she? She's got Maori heritage in her, I think. Maybe not.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Let's just go with what we know. We know she's female, adult human female. And she gets up and just totally destroys Benjamin Doyle's valedictory.
Mr. Speaker, in the last moments of the House sitting before the recent 2-week recess, we were forced to endure insult and indignity in this House by the dishonourable speech given by an MP who we had accommodated his desire to give a departing speech.
This place was not built for people like me, which is precisely the point.
An MP who had spent, in terms of the life of this Parliament, a matter of moments here. We had to endure a narrative that was not only an insult to members of this side of the House, but to the party that brought that member to this Parliament. The member was an MP in a party led by 2 women, yet we were told this is a hostile and toxic place unless you're a cis white man in a black suit and a briefcase.
This is a hostile and toxic place, especially if you're not a cis straight white man with a blue suit and a briefcase.
Yeah, anyway, I'll leave it there, but you can watch it. Just do Political Speech of the Year on our Facebook or website, and you will see it there, or on our YouTube channel, actually. It is sitting there. But, I mean, the gall of him to just turn up and just basically insult Parliament, insult every politician, completely ignore that we've had 2 female prime ministers, that the leaders of his party are female, that Māori are actually overrepresented in Parliament. There's 18% in the population or about thereabouts, and yet, 26% of Parliament. Actually, I did just look up. She's got Māori, Scottish, and Irish descent. Iwi affiliations are Ngāti Hou, Ngāpui, and Ngāti Whai. So, yeah, she's a relative of Kelvin Davis and Hone Harawira. So she has definitely got the Māori stock, but apparently, according to Benjamin Doyle, it's only for cis white males like you, Simon.
Yeah, well, Benjamin Doyle is just completely full of it from the moment he came in. But it's the classic left wing and certainly the Greens dynamic, which has never let the facts get in the way of a story. And the other aspect, and we touched on this briefly before, they will look at the likes of Casey Costello and David Seymour and Winston Peter Shane Jones as the wrong type of Maori. You're only a good Maori if you vote far left, for example. If you're a gay person like in Parliament, if you're on Benjamin Doyle's side, that's fine. If you're on the centre right, you're a bad one, and so you just get ignored and derided. So again, and it's a narcissism too. I mean, who gives a valedictory after only really a few months in Parliament? I mean, personally, should have been declined. I mean, it was his choice, Doyle's choice. But, I think most people would have said, look, I've got nothing really to say. I've barely been here. Tells you all you need to know about his personality.
Okay, we've just got a couple of minutes. I just want to quickly cover something because we are going to discuss this a bit more on Straight Talk on Monday night. But this poll done as part of the political polling that the Post published, the Clearwater one, 1 in 7 say violence may be needed to get the country back on track, so political violence. But when you break it down, here's the interesting stat. The highest proportion of those who think violence is okay support to Pati Maori. Interestingly, followed by ACT on 20%. And then I did have the figures just for the lower ones. It was ACT supporters, so 1 in 5 ACT supporters agree that violence could be okay. Just 16% Labour, 13% National, 10% for New Zealand First. And interestingly, 8% amongst Green voters. So they're the peace lovers, aren't they? But are we surprised at this little graph? Probably not.
Not really. I mean, partly it's mirroring what we're seeing overseas. I think there was some polling or research done recently. It was in the United States and in the UK, which had said the same thing. We unfortunately are seeing a class of citizens who do believe that violence is a way forward. And again, it shouldn't surprise us here in New Zealand. The Pati Maori's rhetoric is often violent. You think of the imagery they use. I mean, Rawari's Instagram wasn't a while back talking about his lawnmower wanting to cut down David Seymour. So they use violent language, they use violent rhetoric. You can look back to obviously how the trans activists dealt with Posey Parker, the violence that's been implicit and explicit in the pro-Hamas rallies and so forth. So it's not a surprise, but we should be worried about it, actually. We are, as I've talked about it before, a continuum of violence, and it ultimately ends in like what we've seen with Charlie Kirk. And we need to put a stop to this now.
Yeah. So we will talk about this more on Monday night, but this is the US data, and basically Gen Z, so youngest, going up to baby boomers, the oldest. You can see there that violence is more acceptable amongst the younger generations, but that orange is the black population, disproportionately high for Gen Z and millennials, saying it's okay. Interestingly, at my age, the baby boomers, it's the white people, the white cis men and women. Maybe they were the ones causing the violence at Posey Parker. Hey, all us old people with our Zimmer frames smacking it into people and tripping people up. Anyway, look, just one other issue I just want to cover before we go, and it's this one. So Parliament has voted that now when we watch Q&A on Sunday, which I'm sure we don't, but Sunday mornings, Christmas Day and public holidays, it's all ads now. Yeah, and I think you gave me the heading for this. Is anything sacred anymore?
Well, sadly not. I mean, there'll always be the argument of, why should a particular religious tradition, in this case around something like Christmas Day, block this from happening. But, I think you can even take a step back from a matter of faith and say that we can have days where we don't need advertising, just as we can have days where you don't need the liquor store and the supermarket to be open. And ultimately a society which holds nothing sacred really just begins to lose its foundation and its basis. And so I just thought it was disappointing. They stuffed up the voting, didn't they?
Apparently they turned up to do the vote and the whips hadn't organised the vote, so they didn't have a quorum, so they couldn't do the vote, which is pretty bad organisation. I mean, I think it was a Thursday night and everybody had headed off home back to their electorates, I think, probably, or all sitting in the Corrie Club. So,
I suspect that's right. Clearly, the whips didn't. You've got to get proxy votes. If you're not in the chamber, you've got to have written permission to hand your vote over to the whip. So clearly, they didn't organise that. But you've nailed it too, Bob, with Thursday night. I bet you a whole lot of MPs had slipped out quietly. And so when the bells were ringing, they weren't there. The whips would have been beside themselves.
Okay. Just before we go, there was a couple of interesting results in the local body elections while you're out of the country. A couple of interesting ones that you would be familiar with. Jamie Lee Ross, your old colleague, he couldn't even get on a local board, which might be just as well. I mean, he's now in the business of running an escort agency or something. So that's I'm not quite sure why you'd want him on a community board. Down in Whakatane, they have voted as their new mayor, Nandor Tanchos. Remember the Green MP with the dreadlocks who wanted to legalise weed? So, there's something in the water down there. On the positive, Tim McIndoe won the Hamilton mayoralty. So that was a good result. I think, So those were just some interesting ones about it anyway. Right, we are out of time. Well out of time. We need to get out of here. We have daybreak tomorrow morning, and then we'll be back on Monday night to talk about especially the political violence and some of the trends there. And also there's some new polling that we're going to discuss from the US that suggests that the whole trans agenda, LGBT identification by younger generations is on a deep decline, and almost as though the peer pressure has come off. Maybe it's a Trump effect. Maybe it's the people are starting wake up to it. So that'll be an interesting discussion. Anyway, it's probably your bedtime, Simon, because it's about, midnight in Utah. So we'll let you go. And to the audience, thank you for watching and have a great night.